I can imagine a scenario where things slow there, and that the Chinese might well regard that as at least semi-satisfactory. Number two, frankly, and I really enjoyed John's presentation. China has laid out some interesting possibilities with North Korea, but there's a very big if there. And what we do not know at this point, and we lack the requisite access to be able to determine it, is how these various procedures and possibilities will play out over time. Whether indeed, North Korea writ large or component parts of the system will be of a mind to contribute, interact, and so forth. I mean, there have been lots of things over the years. Again, the good examples are the Russians. I mean, the general Russian estimate is that North Korea owes Russia somewhere between $8 and $9 billion. The North Koreans have not paid back a kopeck of that money. And that was after all kinds of wheedling, cajoling, flattery, God knows what. So I'm not saying that the Chinese face something totally analogous. It's different for a whole host of reasons that John has outlined here. But what we don't yet know is how that kind of partnership and relationship would work over time, politically or economically. So those are the factors that I would
Mark Mann.
Hi, thanks to both John and Jonathan for great presentations. I have a few questions that sort of center around it's an unanswerable question, but I'll pose it anyway, which is how much is the Chinese government really involved in this, the commercial aspects of this relationship? So three types of questions come to mind. First of all, to what extent are we talking about state-owned enterprises? I know that there's research out there, for example, by Mark Noland and Steph Haggard, which shows evidence that actually state-owned enterprises occupy a smaller and declining share of actual trade that's going on across the border. Secondly, what prices do you see that North Koreans are paying? Again, there's evidence out there that the Chinese are actually charging higher prices for a lot of their commercial exports to North Koreans than they are to the rest of the world, and particularly to South Korea, if you look at similar product lines. So what prices are the North Koreans charging? Are the Chinese, in fact, gouging them? And then lastly, maybe most importantly, is if you come across signs of changes in the way that the Chinese seem to be subsidizing the growing bilateral deficit between the two. What I've heard stories of people who've gone up on the border, and John, you've heard this too, that in effect there's a system whereby a Chinese enterprise or company will, make a sale, reach a bill of sale with a North Korean counterpart, and then contact some central authority in Beijing and say, okay, how much of this are you guys going to write off? What percentage of it are you going to do? So, again, this all centers around the role of the Chinese government in subsidizing commercial trade.
If I can make a small comment, I think John may be better able to address this. I think the primary, obviously, economic activity between North Korea and China is the profusion of Chinese goods that, with all kinds of merchant activity of one kind or another. A lot of this, I'm quite convinced, is really not anything that is being orchestrated and controlled from Beijing. I think a lot of it is based on localities where, of course, part of it is given the Korean minority population in the areas contiguous to the north. There may be a lot of fluidity in this regard. It's just simply the availability of goods, if you will, that's really what's generating the consumer economy, if you will, of North Korea. But I think what you're talking about here is this very interesting analytic question that, as you say, we really can't answer, is to what extent are these policies and relationships being set by some kind of people operating in Beijing? I don't really, clearly the kinds of things Prime Minister Wen and others were talking about would be things that would clearly involve, I believe, a lot of central oversight, even if those who might implement it would be more on a local basis. But maybe there's a mix here. I mean, in essence, it's some of both. But the identification now of the Chinese government at the highest levels with some of these projects suggests to me that it's going to be a visible hand on Beijing's part that is very, very much involved, and frankly, we'll have to see what kinds of expectations and quid pro quos are established vis-a-vis what China will expect from North Korea as that relationship evolves.
I would just add that the Chinese government angle, it seems to be a very macro one, where everyone wants to sign the agreements. So in 2005, after Hu Jintao went and signed a China-North Korea investment protection treaty, then the whole question is it going to be enforced? Moves toward that end, there was a posting of a Ministry of Commerce official in the Chinese embassy in Pyongyang. So they're trying to create this infrastructure for doing that, but any Chinese businessmen note that only the large SOEs enjoy the protection. You still have a lot of the small, medium Chinese enterprises getting fleeced in North Korea. And the list of Chinese companies that have gone bankrupt doing business in North Korea is a very long list. Yet for that long list, there are many more Chinese companies very eager to break into the North Korean market, as they say. So it's a very interesting dynamic where they see these service-related restaurants, beverages, other industries, not just the big mining type of deals. When it comes to the SOEs, there's an important distinction here that the case of the 2005 Busan mine deal, the Chinese partner, the Chinese SOE was actually a local player. It was Donghua Iron and Steel, which is a Jilin provincial province controlled state-owned enterprise. But even there, the ownership structure is interesting because it's going under a lot of change. Just this past summer, I believe it's called Jilin Steel, which is a private steel company based out of Beijing, a very large one, tried to increase its stake in Donghua. And the Donghua workers protested and actually killed Jilin Steel general manager. So the level of transformation within these SOEs in China is a very remarkable part of the interaction with North Korea. The overall SOE structure as well, it's important to bear in mind that while these are very large deals signed at the highest levels, you see the phenomenon of local Chinese having much more in common with local North Koreans. So Jilin province, Hamgyong province, I think Hamji, so Hamgyong, Jilin, Hamji is another way to think of it, because it is a symbiotic relationship. They have much more in common. So local Chinese there have much more in common with their counterparts across the border than those local Chinese have with Beijing, and likewise local North Koreans have with Pyongyang. And that's a dynamic that's deepening. And so business like Premier Wen's, with his emphasis on what he called education, tourism, trade agreements, deepens this local-to-local interaction. One final point about the pricing and different attempts by the Chinese to stabilize the bilateral trade. We've been hearing very interesting anecdotes about how the Chinese government is trying to foster some of this border activity. Early on, we heard Chinese government entities not giving grants or humanitarian aid to the North Koreans, but giving subsidies and grants to Chinese merchants who encourage free trade. And so they actually almost like venture capital type of money. And that activity had spillover effects and really fueled the Hamji type of commercial activities on a local level. And when it came to pricing for state companies affiliated to Kim Jong-il, defectors note that in the prelude to big celebrations, these big parades and whatnot, the Chinese government, in a way to increase their standing with the North Koreans, would give very preferential prices on goods needed for those very large celebrations and parades. So you see the Chinese using different means, but at the commercial money-making level, there is a lot of Chinese companies taking advantage of North Korean state trading companies, North Korean state trading companies taking advantage of Chinese. There is no one victim of this.
I just want to thank you again